Greetings, my excellent friends. The Dead Monk welcomes you to Purgatory, and Star Wars is struggling to win over the next generation of kids. So Star Wars movies overall, the Disney movies, they've made money. But the debate I've had with people many a time since Disney took over Star Wars is that ticket sales were never the big money maker for Star Wars. I mean, in the first 35 years of Star Wars, sure, movies made some money, but they were far from the big money maker. Merchandise. Merchandise is what made money with Star Wars. Toys, clothes, video games, lunchboxes, coloring books. So much stuff out there with Star Wars all over it. That's what made the money. And the current Star Wars? Nope. Merchandise is way down. Ticket sales are still good, for now. Although they weren't for Solo. We'll see how the next movie goes. Ticket sales are good for now, but nothing else is good for Star Wars, in terms of making money. And everyone who's told me that Star Wars has been such a good investment for Disney, will remember that they paid $4 billion for it. Well, they had not turned a profit on Star Wars until just last year, and already interest is waning. They may go back in the red within not too long. But if Star Wars were in the hands of somebody competent, they'd already have made that money back just in merchandise. If they just made good stories with good characters, they'd make all that money back so easily. Now, what's the biggest problem with them? Well, it's the same problem Star Trek's having. You make the most money off of normies, but if you don't appease those hardcore fans, it's not going to last long. As soon as all the hardcore fans go away, the normies follow. Star Trek is doing horribly with STD. Most of the hardcore Star Trek fans don't care about STD, think it sucks, because it does. And some normies like it, but hardly anyone's watching that show, and they do not have any merchandise selling for that. Doctor Who? Same thing. The most recent series, they were trying their best to bring in more normies, and what happened? Well, they upset too many fans of Doctor Who, merchandise sales are down, and now that show is in major trouble. Star Wars is going that same route. Normies liked Star Wars Good Morning Force, but even a lot of the normies were not a big fan of Star Wars The Last Unicorn. And most hardcore fans didn't like it. Some hardcore fans actually liked Good Morning Force. I hated it. I hated it so much I didn't even go see The Last Unicorn. It was so just creatively bankrupt, zero imagination, a complete rip-off of Star Wars. It was just sad. So yeah, I didn't even go see The Last Unicorn. And most people I know who are big fans of Star Wars, well, they still went and saw The Last Unicorn, but now they're done. So you still get plenty of normies going to see, what's the new one? Oh yeah, Star Wars Luke's Erection. But don't expect it to last much longer than the erection. And I'm not bad-mouthing normies. If something's going to make money, it needs normies. You can only be a very small, very niche thing if you don't get the normies involved. And I think Marvel has been as lucky as they are catering to normies with their movies, and they've made, what now, like 24 or so? I don't see that lasting too much longer. After Avengers Endgame, even a lot of the normies are looking at that as a good jumping off point. And of course Disney's trying to get so political with it. So I think that gravy train is on its way out too. Not as quickly as Star Wars though. Alright, so let's see what this has to say. So this is by Creighton Harrison of Bloomberg. Alright, so Creighton says, "It's hard to say this as someone who grew up pretending to be Han Solo battling Darth Vader and his stormtroopers to rescue Princess Leia, but it must be said, kids might not be into Star Wars anymore. Yeah, well, the new characters suck. Walt Disney Company's underwhelming theme park attendance last quarter was the latest sign that the intergalactic saga isn't resonating for younger generations raised on Iron Man and Fortnite. Well, yeah, when Star Wars came out, there were plenty of other things for kids to be into. So it's not like just because there's Iron Man and Fortnite means there's not enough room in kids' lives for Star Wars. Chief Executive Officer Bob Iger was so sure fans would be blasting through the door that he had instituted a reservation system for visitors to enter Star Wars Galaxy's Edge, the new attraction at Disneyland. It turned out not to be necessary. Yeah, nobody's going. Star Wars toy sales popped with 2015's Good Morning Force, the start of a trilogy that united Han, Luke, and Leia. No. When were they united? They were all in the movie, but they were never united. With a new band of heroes. But have slumped since. Well, sure. Of course the toy sales were going to do well in that one. The movie came out right before Christmas, so nobody had the chance to see if they even liked the movie or not. Although, to be fair, most people did like Good Morning Force. Most people were not like me. As I said, I hated it. But you had the first Star Wars movie since 2004, 2005? I don't recall when Revenge of the Sith came out. Something like that. But yeah, first one since then, so it had been about 10 years. Of course toy sales were going to do well for that. Let's see. Solo, a Star Wars story, last year's spin-off featuring the backstory beloved characters, utterly bombed. Yeah, I haven't even seen it. The Last Unicorn, the second in the new trilogy, as I said, haven't seen that, was profitable but fell shy of its predecessor's performance. The next installment, Luke's Erection, will have the very future of the franchise riding on it when it debuts in December. And Jar Jar Abrams is in charge of it, so don't keep your hopes up. It's just going to be a bunch of things, a bunch of ideas ripped off from other movies, particularly Star Wars movies, or other movies Jar Jar has made, like his crap Star Trek movies. It's not going to be good. This guy does not have an imagination, has no creativity. How does he get work? I don't know. But I digress. There wasn't supposed to be such a disturbance in the Force. When Disney bought Lucasfilm Limited in 2012 for $4 billion, it already had a template for the intricate web of sequels and spin-offs it hoped to create around the Star Wars brand. Yeah, you know what kinds of sequels and spin-offs you should have gone for? Take that vast resource you had, the whole library of the Extended Universe books, take the ones people like, and make movies out of those. I've said this in another video, but if they really wanted to jump ahead 30 years, to just make the characters who are still around be age appropriate for how old the actors are now, they could have jumped straight ahead to the Yuuzhan Vong War. I think the Yuuzhan Vong War would have been just a little bit earlier than 30 years, but whatever. But you had these two big storylines they could have made movies off of. If you haven't read all these books, then, basically, the Yuuzhan Vong, they're from another galaxy, and they come in to invade, and they almost wipe out the entire New Republic. But there actually is a New Republic, because Return of the Jedi, well, the Rebels won, and they established a New Republic. They didn't just for 30 years maintain the status quo of what was going on before Return of the Jedi started. Jar Jar Abrams. So you have this huge threat coming in from another galaxy, so that would be something different. Right? It's not just rebels against the Empire. It's not just the same story repeated that we had in the original trilogy. It'd be something new. And it went well. People liked it. I mean, that story arc went over about, I want to say it was about 20 books total for the Yuuzhan Vong War. Yeah, they could have adapted that into a few movies. If Harrison Ford really didn't want to play Han Solo anymore, well then they could have dropped a moon on him instead of Chewie. But at this point, the remnants of the Empire have basically joined with the New Republic, especially since they have to fight off the Yuuzhan Vong. So how interesting would it be to actually have all the ships of the old rebel forces, now the New Republic? So you got your X-Wings, A-Wings, B-Wings, Corellian corvettes, calamari cruisers, Nebulon beef frigates, all this good fun stuff. Actually fighting alongside Star Destroyers, TIE Fighters, TIE Interceptors, and whatever other new ships they've made in the last 30 years. Instead, no. We just get a repeat. It's the exact same story as Star Wars. It's embarrassing. So, yeah. It already had a template for the intricate web of sequels and spin-offs it hoped to create around the Star Wars brand. Yeah, well, their ideas sucked. As I said, there was no reason to just throw out everything from the extended universe. I mean, there's no reason they couldn't change it at all. But take the stories, as I said, that people liked, and adapt that. You know that it's already something that's been well received. That's a great starting point. Now, if they didn't want to do that, they could have gone a little farther after the Yuuzhan Vong War. When now the old Imperials and the New Republic, they've made peace because of the Yuuzhan Vong War. And, well, this is the story that kind of got ripped off. Well, Han and Leia, they had 3 kids, 2 twins, Jason and Jaina, and then they had another son, Anakin. Well, at this point, he's dead. But you have Jaina and Jason, some of the heroes of the war, although Jason was always kind of a douche. Well, and now Jason's basically been tainted from this whole war, and he kind of, he's sort of trying to become a new emperor. So yeah, this is kind of what they ripped off to do Good Morning Force, well, the whole new sequel trilogy, because you do have Han and Leia's son, who's gone bad. Basically, the daughter, Jaina, eventually she has to go and fight and kill her brother. I mean, that would actually have some emotion, not like anything in Jar Jar Wars. So this was one of the biggest mistakes, is thinking they could just tell their own stories, especially with Jar Jar Abrams in charge. Thinking they could tell their own stories and have it be just, oh, it has to be successful, it's Star Wars. No. You need good writing. Alright, so back to this. Marvel Entertainment, acquired 3 years earlier, had rolled out a series of interrelated movies with characters who went on to join up in the blockbuster Avengers movie, then Disney's most successful ever. So with Marvel had already made, 2 or 3 movies before Disney purchased them, and they also had some in production. So I think, really, there were already 6 or 7 movies that either had been completed and released or had already been started before Disney got involved. This was already all laid out for them. I mean, maybe not all the way up through Avengers Endgame, but I think the basic groundwork of what, how they would get to Avengers Endgame, that was already there. That had nothing to do with Disney. On the other hand, if they had purchased Marvel before any of these movies got made, I really don't think that they would have had anywhere near as much success with them. So I think that's the biggest problem with Star Wars. They bought it and then tried to make the whole plan themselves. Then they suck at that. Alright, so yeah, Avengers was Disney's most successful, and yeah, again, I think Avengers was already in production. I'm sure they at least had the story already set before Disney bought it. The films are supposed to combine with TV projects and theme parks to create a virtuous cycle. Virtuous? Where fans get excited for each new iteration and can immerse themselves in the world of their heroes. There was every reason to believe Star Wars would have a similar path with its endearing droids, otherworldly lifeforms, and minor characters like Lando Calrissian and Boba Fett who inspired their own cult followings. No, there wasn't every reason to believe Star Wars would have a similar path. One of the big reasons? Jar Jar Abrams. As soon as they picked him to do Star Wars, I said, hey, bad idea. And I feel vindicated. I know a lot of people like Good Morning Force, but it's the fact that he has no idea how to take anything to completion, which is funny that he's directing Luke's erection. He doesn't know how to direct anything to completion. He can't finish a story. He did Good Morning Force and then just didn't care and said, oh yeah, sure, Ruin Johnson, here, do whatever you want. I don't care. It's not my story. No. For people who liked Good Morning Force but hated The Last Unicorn, that's all on Jar Jar. I mean, it's on Ruin Johnson's head too, but Jar Jar gets just as much of the blame for that. So no, there wasn't every reason to believe Star Wars would have a similar path. As I said, Star Wars, unlike Marvel, did not have a path laid out already, did not already have movies in production when they bought it, and they had no idea what they're doing and just tried to do it on their own, and they haven't done that well. If Jar Jar Abrams had been in charge of Marvel, well, those movies would have ended a long time ago. Alright, so now fans sniping. Instead, some of the franchise's most dedicated fans have been sniping at the way Disney has handled their favorite characters from the old movies. Yeah. They should be. And the new trilogy's heroes like Rey and Poe Dameron just haven't inspired the same fervor among young people, with toy sales falling flat around each new installment. Yeah, the characters are boring. The Disneyland attraction, along with the Star Wars land opening at Disney World in Florida this year. Oh, they're doing one at Disney World too? Wow. How many billions of dollars are they wasting on these? Are designed as much for older dudes as they are for types. What about older girls? Just dudes? With a Millennium Falcon themed ride in a cantina where you can debate whether Greedo shot first over... No. Alright, I'm starting to doubt this line right here. It's hard to say as someone who grew up pretending to be Han Solo battling Darth Vader and his stormtroopers to rescue Princess Leia, blah blah blah. Did you really? Because if you did, no. Real Star Wars fans wouldn't be debating whether Greedo shot first. Greedo never even shot. Han Solo just blasted him. Nobody would argue about whether Greedo shot first. He didn't shoot first or second. He didn't shoot at all. Oh, but vodka cocktails called Bloody Rancors? Sounds like a feminist drink. Iger has attributed disappointing box office figures to Star Wars fatigue. Nope, wrong. I'm sorry, Star Wars fatigue? What? 2, 3, 4 Marvel movies every single year, and that hasn't led to fatigue. But you think a Star Wars movie, one a year, leads to fatigue? And he's pledged to slow down the tempo of releases. But that doesn't square with the success of Marvel, yeah, which reliably churns out a blockbuster every 4 to 6 months. Some people delayed their visits to Star Wars Galaxy's Edge because they thought it would be overwhelmed by tourists when it opened, Iger said Tuesday, channeling Yogi Berra. In other words, nobody goes there anymore, it's too crowded. Now, going back to this, you could very easily put out one Star Wars movie a year if you actually varied up the material. If not every single movie were about the exact same characters, or the exact same story we've already seen. I mean, look at what they've made. They've made a rip-off of Star Wars, a sequel to that, with, whatever, some characters that still existed from the original trilogy, as well as these new characters that are boring. They made Rogue One, which was a completely unnecessary movie that takes place right before Star Wars. And then they made Solo, an origin story for one of the coolest movie characters of all time. And going back and telling an origin story for a cool character is never going to work out. That's never going to go well. No, tell other stories. There's all this talk about Quentin Tarantino doing a Star Trek movie. How cool would it be for him to do a Star Wars movie? None of the characters you know, it's just something with random characters that takes place in the Outer Rim or in the unknown regions involving the Chith ascendancy. Just something. It doesn't have to be any characters you know. I think that would be pretty fun. Even more fun than it would be to have him do the similar thing in Star Trek. But do some other stuff. Explore this galaxy that's out there. Not every movie has to involve all the same people and be about the same struggle between rebels and the Empire. Do other stuff, and you could easily put out one movie a year. But if there is actually some Star Wars fatigue, it's because you're telling the same tired story over and over. Alright, so anyway. Instead of going to Galaxy's Edge, where are they going instead? One clue could be the rising attendance over Universal Studios Hollywood, where the wizarding world of Harry Potter saw an increase in spring break visitors last quarter. Butterbeer? I assume that's something from the Harry Potter books. I've never read them or seen the movies. But yeah, that does not sound appealing. That's a libation I will be avoiding. Alright, okay, so Harry Potter attendance is up. Star Wars attendance is crap. Disney plans to parlay the robust Marvel properties into theme park attractions of their own. Except, when they do that, it's going to be nothing but Captain Marvel and female Thor. We'll see how that goes. But it isn't giving up on Star Wars by any stretch. Along with Luke's erection, the company is debuting a live-action Star Wars TV series, The Mandalorian, later this year on its new streaming service. Last Unicorn director Ruin Johnson is developing a new trilogy. And the creators of Game of Thrones are working on a movie. I thought they were supposed to have a trilogy too. Is it just one movie? This may be a hiatus, but Disney spent a lot of money on Lucasfilm and it's going to keep investing to make it a success. Yeah, they should keep investing, but they should invest wisely. Taking the route Bob Iger took and all the decisions he made, and all the people he put in charge, all I can say is...
He chose poorly.
We build these things for long term, Iger said of Galaxy's Edge, or as Yoda might say, patience you must have. More importantly, wisdom you must have. Sorry mate, you don't have it. No one's buying your toys. No one's buying your video games because there aren't any. You only let EA make them. Stupid. I have no idea about book sales. I don't even know how many books they've put out since Disney threw out all the good extended universe canon. So I don't know. Maybe those are selling well? No idea. And when it comes to merchandise, from what I've seen, it seems like the only merchandise they're actually selling is typically original trilogy. Because nobody wants the new stuff. That's why you find all the toys and new characters in the clearance bin. But the main point of the article, children aren't getting into Star Wars. Yeah, I can completely see that. Because you know what? Children don't care about political agendas and anything like that. The children. Children are going to be into interesting characters, good stories, stuff that they can have fun with. You know, like the original trilogy. Once you've driven away all the old Star Wars fans, and the normies get bored with it and move on to something else, and you don't have any new hardcore fans because you're not attracting children, then you'll be left with nothing. So patience you must have. Patience isn't going to do you any good. Well, I think I've prattled on long enough. So if you've made it this far, consider liking or subscribing. And instead of being like the wankers in charge of Star Wars, what you should do is go out there and just be excellent to each other. Farewell.